The following episode is brought to you by Rogue Coffee Roasters MKE. This is a small business in the Midwest, in the heart of America, Milwaukee, making great coffee with unique flavors. And it is also brought to you by BuildCores, a PC parts and building app on both Android and iOS. But we'll get to those later. Right now, let's get to the show. Okay, and welcome to Broken Silicon, a PC hardware and gaming podcast. This is being recorded actually right after Thanksgiving. Me and my co-host,
Dan,
are in our parents' house right now, actually in the old unfinished part of the basement, because that's where the acoustics are best.
For some reason.
There's boxes in here.
There's just so much shit in here that it dampens the echo.
Exactly. And so the only thing we're saying is you might hear a door close above us. You might hear paws of dogs walking around.
There are 3 dogs currently in the house, so you never know.
This is what works, and we are committed to giving you guys that sick content every week. So
yeah, and hopefully you'll get some fun random audio of dogs walking around this time.
I would almost guarantee you'll randomly hear a bark once.
Yeah, probably.
Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good.
How was your Thanksgiving? How was our Thanksgiving?
I think it was pretty good. Had some turkey, as is the usual for Thanksgiving. I'm sure a lot of people had turkey.
Mashed potatoes.
A
vegetable cheesy hot dish, as is standard for the Midwest.
Yeah.
Especially northern Midwest, where we're from.
And we went to see Knives Out.
We saw Knives Out. We saw Ford v. Ferrari. We saw The Irishman.
Yeah, all good movies.
We watched H3H3. Our parents didn't seem to like it very much. Not a fan of Ethan and Hila. Didn't seem to get that Ethan is intentionally sounding stupid all the time.
Well, I'm not sure how much of the crossover your audience has with H3H3, so we might just be talking out of our asses right now to them.
No, we're not. There's plenty of people who know who Ethan and Hila are.
I mean, they have like 7 million subscribers, so I'm sure there's some crossover.
But to the people who know Ethan, the problem is if you show an old person Ethan talking, your parents won't get that he knows he's wrong almost constantly. They're like my mom would be in the background. Yeah, well, that's not correct. I'd say, yeah, I don't know if you see the guy wearing the beanie and like shifting around in a chair in a pastel colored hoodie. We know he's not the foremost expert on foreign policy.
Well, he might be.
I mean, compared to what we have now, could be pretty good. I'll take him. Anyways, I think we should get started. This might be the last standard Tom and Dan episode of the year. We have 11 years of being a PC gamer coming, more die shrinks coming, and I'm going to try to get one more guest after this, but if you can believe it, if this comes out, what December 3rd or something?
Sounds about right.
December 3rd or 4th, and then a week later is another guest episode. The next week is almost Christmas, and that's when we'll start rolling out the multi-part series with Chris, the good old gamer, not an Apple fan, Cortex, and of course, unfortunately, me and Dan. But shall we get started in this? The previous one, and you will enjoy this. I put out on Twitter our previous Tom and Dan episode, the 3950X one. I said the penultimate Tom and Dan episode. Where do you land on penultimate?
It's a word that it can be used for second to last of something.
Yeah. Some people I've heard say it sounds very hoity-toity.
Hey, I learned that word reading a series of unfortunate events when I was in like 3rd grade. I don't think it's that hoity-toity.
I got to agree. It does sound very Burgoese to me. Anyways, actually, where I'm going to start this episode is a message from Gerard. On the previous Tom and Dan episode, someone asked a question about audio engineering, and he wrote in. So I didn't want to speak out of turn, but he can certainly speak to this. He says, Regarding a rig for audio editing, I don't use my Windows PC to do anything audio related. And that's probably because when I was at university, they taught me in a Mac environment. By 2011, I had my own iMac. Now I have a MacBook Pro, a mid 2015 model with an i7 and 16 gigabytes. But I do know you would definitely want a good processor, as much RAM as you can get. You work as an audio engineer. To process all of the VST audio and MIDI tracks and plugins, not as much for podcasts or smaller projects, but for other types of audio work. My experience working with Pro Tools and Windows honestly just isn't very good or stable compared to Mac, to be clear. But if I had to build a PC just for audio production, I would focus a lot on air cooling and noise. Keep in mind that some people keep their PC in another room just to avoid noise. I'm rambling now. Have fun, guys. But yeah, and that's one thing I have heard too, is you want a lot of threads, especially if you're doing complex audio work.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah. Anyways, Carbon Cry writes in and says, once an edgelord, always an edgelord. Hashtag Edge Nation, which is in reference to, I believe, the live stream where I said I was an edgelord in high school. And I basically am an edgelord when I'm sober half the time. Would you agree?
Kind of. I don't know. I don't know if you're like super, super edgy, but
I can be still.
Yeah, you can
Every
be.
now and then you'll run into high school, Tom, and you'll like say one thing incorrect, and I'll just like look at you like, so do I strangle you now, or like, what's next? That was the era of Tom where I didn't really drink at all, and you'd find me nitpicking on Tom's hardware forums constantly. You just gotta let it go. just gotta let it go. So I think it's time to get into the news. I think that's enough banter. We'll have more reader mail questions throughout. The first story, number one, the teaser of the 3990X. It's confirmed the 3990X is the 64 core. It's coming early next year, 2020.
To the shock of everybody that listens to this and other PC hardware stuff.
You can't maybe tell Dan is being sarcastic. We are in no way shocked.
Maybe I should intonate better when I'm being sarcastic. I've noticed a lot of people that don't know me. They're like,
well, also, you got Europeans, and I don't know if you've noticed, half of the countries out there don't even have sarcasm.
Yeah, that's true.
When we went to high school, I had a friend from New Zealand, and like me and my friend realized we could just be sarcastic and she wouldn't know what was happening anymore.
And that was like a bit in Flight of the Conchords, like New Zealanders not understanding sarcastic Americans.
Was it?
Yeah. They were always very literal in Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah. Now, if you're from Canada, the US, France,
England,
probably Germany, you understand sarcasm pretty well. You get it. But there's some countries out there where it's just like, why is he saying those things?
Why are you saying that?
Or like, yeah. And if you're one of those people, we don't care. We're not mad at you. But just know that if you think me and Dan have malice, we don't. We're either just screwing around or we're being sarcastic.
Our parents raised us this way. There's no way for me to not be like this, guys.
I mean, me and Dan had to deal with the most sarcastic parents in history from 4 we were like dealing with. Remember our mom used to say, like, she would like smile and say, if you kids aren't good, I'm going to put you in the closet with upside down crucifixes.
Yep.
And I laughed. And I was 4. So I knew it was a joke by the time I was 4.
Yeah. So
you guys, we come from a weird family, but this is an exclusively PC hardware podcast going back to the 3990X. I mean, I think it's going to cost $4,000, double the 32 core.
I was saying that, like, if it has 64 threads in 64 cores, not threads, it's going to be $4,000. It's twice as many cores. I mean, I could see them even trying to do more than $4,000, like 4,300 or something.
Yeah. Now you can get 64 core Epic chips, or at least I believe you used to be able to, for a little under $5,000. I don't actually remember the exact price. Now these were clocked. These will have been clocked lower than I'm sure what this ends up being clocked though. So I guess it depends. They might actually just straddle the line with what they charge for Epic.
Probably. I could easily see them going more than $4,000 though, and I doubt they'll go under. Unless it's very low
I think
clocked.
they could very easily go 3,500.
Okay.
I mean, 80% yields, just put junk yields on it. And then put 1 or 2 good chiplets. Really good chiplets so you can boost higher. I honestly don't see why that. I do think that's what they're going to do. Is just say, hey, a chance to sell, 6 3700Xs for double the price. And then
Yeah.
they'll put two good, and then they'll put one 3950X on there.
And if they could get away with selling it for $3,500, I'm sure that would look great to everyone. Like that would really ingratiate themselves to everyone that's talking about this.
I guess we'll see. If there's a 48 core, they'll probably go for 4,000, and then they'll go for like 3,000 for the 3,200 for the 48 core or something. I don't know.
If they do a 48 core.
Which brings us to, I definitely think they could do a 48 core, guys. I'm not saying they won't, but I see this. There's been literally no evidence, no leaks of a 48 core, nothing. And you see like Linus Tech Tips and WCCF Tech just putting like 3990X, and then right below it they just put like $38X /WX. Like at WCCF still put /WX, even though we know the name. And it's like, guys, they don't need to do that. The original Threadripper, think about it for a second. What did it launch with? 8, 12, and 16. 3. It launched with 3. Yeah. They don't need more than that. There wasn't anything else. They didn't bother to do like some 6 core or something silly like that, or 4 core. That's like, that's it. And then with Zen Plus, they just refreshed the 12 and 16 core. They got rid of the 8 core. And then they added a 24 and a 32. Mm-hmm. So they could do 4, but I wouldn't assume so. And again, I think if you think about the market, it's like we're having trouble supplying enough 6-core chiplets. Again, 80% yields means 80% 8-core yields. I'm sure they disable some of those to get good 6-core yields. But I mean, I don't see don't see the purpose.
So it's almost a matter of if they choose to disable some good yields to make a 48 core, which if they think that there's a market for that, they would do, but then maybe they could just sell the 64 core for less.
I keep saying this. Who is the 48 core for? The 24 and the 32 are common sense. There's plenty of apps that will go up to that many threads. But either the app can use infinite threads and you want all of them or not. I just don't see, because the only argument for a 48 core would be, well, what if it's a bargain? Guys, it's not going to be a bargain.
Yeah, and if you're getting the 64 core, I'm assuming you're probably spending at least 10 grand on this system, probably more. I mean, what is that? And you're probably doing this using this for a job. So what is with the like $500 to $600 you would save for the 48 core when you could just spend the extra money and get the 64?
That's what I think. But again, they could do it. When I don't see an 80X in any leaks, I'm like, yeah, there might not be.
Yeah.
But I think we should move on. Blokes writes in, just like you can if you support us on Patreon, and says the market for the 3980X is a future budget HEDT release. Blokes, budget $3,000 processor. I'm not so sure. Where all other 6-core chiplet processors get discontinued and all the 6-core defects from the armada of 7-nanometer non-EUV fabs can now be sold for much better profit. Well, so that is a point that I would point out, as I could see it existing if they start transitioning to Zen 3 and they don't care about Threadripper. And they just put all the 6-core yields into 48 cores and start selling those. And then they just maybe still just sell the 3600 as a budget chip to replace the 1600.
I guess. I'm not sure because...
And then perhaps they could roll out a 16-core too. Again, that's one thing I would say too. I don't know. Maybe there'll be a 3955X, a 3940X.
Well, because
they don't need to.
Yeah, the budget HEDT right now is what? The
Zen Plus, by the way, that's the budget HEDT.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
16 cores for $600.
Yeah.
And you get 64 PCIe lanes. There's your budget HEDT.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the idea of the 3980X being for future budget HEDTs is confusing to me, but it doesn't make that much sense to me.
But yeah, I mean, I guess that is an interesting argument, though. If they started discontinuing some of their other 6-core chiplets, they can always roll this out. They don't need to launch everything at once. They can just decide, now we're making it.
Well, I mean, if we've seen how they've launched their parts this year, they do not need to launch everything at once. They've been staggering it a lot, it seems. So.
Right. And that brings us to story number 2, 3950X watch. So this is actually interesting. It's selling for $1,000 on eBay. I saw a rep from Newegg say that they think there may have been a bot on Newegg, not on the other websites, but on Newegg, that were auto buying up every 3950X. and then selling them on eBay for $1,000 instantly, like automated.
And that's pretty cool of those spot guys, but
Yeah. Well, I blame Newegg though, right? Like this is Newegg's fault. They're supposed to be the ones that don't allow you to get away with that type of stuff. But what I will say is this: I already in the live stream talked about this, that they got 3950Xs in Chicago. I called them. They said they did get them. They sold. I called them today, actually. They did get them. They sold out immediately. The other one in Elgin, Illinois, they got them. They sold out immediately. Minneapolis, they got them. They sold out immediately. A supporter over in the Northeast, I won't say what state he lives in.
Yeah, don't.
But he said they had 4 this morning, and he was gonna, if I paid him back, he'd ship it. And so then he went to check, and it's gone. So he said in 2 hours, 4 were just gone from this morning. Which again, this is after Thanksgiving when we're recording, so this wasn't like right when it came out. So as far as I can tell, they exist. This is not a paper launch. Just people really want them.
They're just selling out super fast.
Now, I would doubt the stock is insanely high, but I don't know. Here's what I know. Number one selling processor on Amazon. If it's a paper launch, it wouldn't be. Right? They wouldn't have enough stock to climb to number
launch.
1. Yeah. So again, I keep seeing people go, this is a paper launch. There's no availability. No, the demand is just at a fever pitch. Don't listen to the people like, I almost got it a few times too. I keep getting email notifications that it's back in stock on Amazon, and I keep not getting it because it keeps happening while I'm asleep.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about buying the 2700X. It's casual.
Which Dan did.
I just got that. It's casual. You just walk into the Micro Center. There were like 10 of them on the shelf.
Yeah, and for $130, which for those wondering, I am still looking for the 3950X. I did some research last night again to make sure it made sense, and I looked at the different workloads I'll be doing. 2700X just won't cut it, and that means the 3800, even though it's like 30% better, won't either. 3800X is now literally the same price as the 3700X.
Yeah, so
that's pretty cool.
Well, no, you're not going to hear this on Black Friday, but I hope some people, if they're looking to get parts, are doing some Black Friday shopping because there seems to be a lot of good deals right now.
Although I gotta say, I still think it's like just maybe get the 2700X unless you need the better I/O right away, which is why I was considering the 3800X. But it's like, no, I looked it up and it's like, no, I'll max out that 2700X. I will. And even if it's at like 80%, 70%, not quite maxed out with the stuff I'm doing right now, that I don't want it 70% maxed out the day I get it. I want something that's not sweating at all. That's just running a game, rendering, uploading, and has 10 Chrome tabs open at once. And that's what the 3950X is for. It's the same people Threadripper used to be for, except now it's cheaper.
And if you're looking at your upgrade history, you typically have stuck with processors for at least a decent amount of time. So,
I mean, the only reason I switched to that Haswell i7 is because the motherboard kept breaking and I was freaking out. And I actually sold my old i5 plus motherboard for almost the same price I got it for.
Yeah.
And I actually sold that Haswell i7 plus motherboard for about the same price I got the Skylake i7 for.
Was that the... Oh, yeah. Never mind.
So, I mean, if you really think about it, I didn't need to upgrade. I would have stuck with that Ivy Bridge i5. Probably until at least Skylake. I mean, what? So, yeah, like I would have, and I got that in 2016. So I would have stuck with that i5 for 4 years if I didn't have motherboard issues. And I stuck with the Skylake. I still have it. We're not to 4 years yet, but we're about 3 1/3. Mm-hmm. So it might be 4 years. Probably not. I'm planning to upgrade in the next couple months, but
whenever you can,
which is
essentially.
Yeah. Now, Blokes writes in again. I'll give him 2 questions this time. And he says, today, just a year and a half ago, the 2700X was $330. Some can find them for $130. Some people like Dan. And the 2700X was a good processor back then. And 1.5 years later, it's certainly not obsolete. Hopefully this clears up any doubt on the subject. Do I buy this crazy cheap 2700X? Oh, and that DTX motherboard you were talking about before, Tom, is the X570 Asus Crosshair 8 Impact, which comes with its own clipped-on sound card. Yep, that's what I'm going to get. It's expensive, but the VRM cooling is really good for a small motherboard. It also supports up to 64 gigabytes of RAM. It can support like double ranked RAM. So like double the height, like 32 gigs per stick, so it can fit, and it has a sound card built in, it has optical out and all this other stuff. So it's expensive, but I see it as like, well, it's really like a nice $250, $300 motherboard with a sound card.
Yeah, and you'll have enough of those RAM slots to put your dummy RAM sticks in, so that'll be good.
Yeah, because I am a big into those dummy RAM sticks for sure.
But yeah, I mean, about the 2700X, yeah, it's a great processor for $130. I mean,
it's insane.
Do you think
it's insane? It's an i3 price.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess do you think like prices for this gen are going to drop the same way they did for last gen?
See, that's the question that people have been asking me too, that asked on that live stream. Again, I'll plug that again. The end of month loose ends. It was probably the best episode. Dan was in it, and we were really on point the whole time. There was no me getting insanely loopy because Dan was there to rein me in. So, like, that was basically just another podcast. If you listen to this, highly advise going to the last loose ends episode that was on the YouTube channel. I mean, the question I was leading to, though, that I answered there is people asked, do you think it's worth getting, basically, do you think the 2700X will continue to go down in price with pace to the third gen? In other words, will you save more money buying now and then waiting and getting a third gen later? I think you probably will if you wait a year. Like, maybe, I could see the 3950X $500 in a year. Maybe. I mean, probably not in a year, but a year and a half.
A year and a half down the road, who knows? Maybe I'll upgrade my CPU from the 2700X to the 3950 if it's a low enough price. I doubt I will, but
what I see you probably ending up doing,
I'll probably stick with the 2700X for like 4 years. Is what will probably
So for
happen.
those who don't know too, Dan did get an X570 motherboard that was a cheaper one, but it was good and it'll fit in his case. And basically this just allows him to swap out processors and SSDs when he wants to without having to tear apart his entire system in the future.
Yeah.
And again, I think some X570s, if you look at it, they're about the same price, $20 more than a really nice X470. And they have the extra USB and all of that stuff. So it's like, X570 isn't that bad, But yeah, what I see you really doing eventually, Dan, is kind of Zen 3 comes out, and then you wait another half year, and then you see where the prices fall after Rocket Lake comes out.
I've always been a more opportunistic purchaser.
Yeah. Which actually, on that note, Rocket Lake is looking 14 nanometer, by the way. So, but what I find weird is news that they're pulling it up. So I'm still kind of like, I guess I don't know. We don't know. I think there's still that slim chance Rocket Lake is they bring a Cove architecture to 14 nanometer, or they do some kind of half paper launch 10 nanometer hybrid lineup next to their 14 nanometer. I could see that as well. I think the most likely chances it's just another 14 nanometer refresh, though, to be honest. Which is what I've said the whole time. That's what I said in my Whispers of Golden Cove thing.
Yeah, I know. It's just...
To the people that say, Tom thinks, no, I don't think. I've just been told that Intel's trying to do this, but I think it's most likely, to be clear, that it's just another 14 nanometer, which would be so depressing.
I know, because that's what... How many years is that on 14 nanometer now?
If that 2014, isn't it? Or
something like that.
Okay, number 3. So it looks like Navi may be set to introduce the quote-unquote next biggest Navi at CES. And this is according to a Chip Hell leaker who is a popular kind of like a WCCF in China. A bit more accurate, I would say, though. They get a lot of rumors early, and apparently this is the guy that leaked the 590 right before it came out.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name, but I've seen it before, and yeah, he seems to have a lot of good leaks behind him. So
yeah, so I mean, supposedly it will have ray tracing support and other onboard 3D audio and goodies. I mean, just so those who know, CES is January 7th through 10th, I believe. So we're looking at, a launch right after the holiday season. Well, not a launch, an announcement, and then probably a launch in Q1.
So yeah. So like February or March, I guess. And I don't know.
Yeah. So what do you think, Dan?
Not too much. I mean, ray tracing, not a surprise since we know it's in next gen consoles. I think I've said that before, and I don't know what the exact specs are going to be or anything, so I don't have much to say to that. But
yeah, I'm looking at some of the stuff here, and it says a mix of GDR6 and HBM2 graphics cards. So I actually pulled down my Navi videos. I don't know. I actually mean to re-put them up. I just pulled them because I thought people were referencing them too much. And one thing I said is that I had a couple sources really insistent that it was going to support both GDR6 and HBM, which, if true, would be, I don't know, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they've
and some people say that's stupid. They can't do that. Why not?
They could. It's not illegal.
Why can't they make a die that supports both? And then you cut it down more, you put GDR6 on it. Is it that fucking hard to conceive of, you dinguses?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just like, just because it hasn't been done often doesn't mean they can't do it. I could see them doing that with APUs as well. They could have an IO die that supports HBM and graphics, and then the more cut down APU just uses DDR4. Speaking of other leaks too, I just threw this in there. I've been hinted at it again, and I said this in the live stream, that there's some really interesting stuff coming with Zen 3, 4, and 5. Again, guys, I don't have much to say. I'm just kind of throwing this in here at the end here because this is like the only part where we really talk about, I guess, leaks in the distant future.
Mm-hmm.
But it is called Zen 3. It is not called Zen 2 Plus. It is not. It would be fucking insane if it was an 8% IPC increase and nothing else. Guys, it's called Zen 3. Come on. Jesus. And Zen 4 is supposedly going to be as revolutionary as Zen 2. But we'll have to see what that actually means.
That's a couple years down the road, so who knows?
Maybe less than 2 years. So JJ48_24 writes in, just like you can if you support us on Patreon. And he says, I know this is probably a dumb question. We'll be the judge of that, JJ. But will it take time for developers to optimize for the RDNA instruction set when it is implemented in new Navi? I don't think that's a dumb question. I think it's a pretty straightforward answer, though. Time, yes, everything takes time, but I don't think it's going to take as long as you think.
I mean, yeah, the first drivers for it were kind of just modified Vega drivers, weren't they?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's going to be some time where they're optimizing how well this works, and I'm sure we'll see performance gains in the current Navi lineup over the course of its lifetime. I mean, we always see that. But.
And Gamers Nexus did a really good interview with some people at Radeon and basically outlined some ways that this can have significant IPC gains, like massive. I mean, it already has massive, but that we might only be halfway there. And I guess in terms of a time horizon, I mean, look, I see RDNA as, I don't know if it'll last as long as GCN. They say it will, but it could. And if we were to line this up with GCN, although I think people are comparing things to the past a little too often now, like it's always going to be the same.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be the same. I don't think this is probably as revolutionary as GCN, probably. But people talk about how GCN kept getting better and better and better and aged like fine wine. And GCN certainly did get enhancements over 10 years. But don't forget that first massive driver update that gave them a 20 to 30% boost happened December 2012, 1 year after it came out. That was a 30% boost right there.
Yeah, I remember like reviews for that driver. It was like, it feels like you're with some of these cards, it feels like you just got a new card by this driver update. But
yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out that was a year before the PS4 even came out.
Yeah.
So Navi came out, well, a year before the PS4, but I guess technically GCN paper launched 2 years before the PS4.
Yeah.
And so if Navi's coming out 1 year before the PS5, I mean, look, by the time, I think it's not going to take 2 years. I think you're going to start seeing big jumps by early 2021. Big jumps.
Yeah, I mean, with the new consoles coming
And frankly, if it's anything to go by before, it'll probably get big jumps by mid next year. So by summer of 2020, I think you're going to start getting some of these gigantic driver updates that you see these huge jumps in performance. That'll be fun to watch, I think.
Yeah, that's always fun to see.
But speaking of Navi launches, also the RX 5500 has been reviewed on a few places, including Tech Power Up. Did you look at its results, Dan?
Yeah. So I think we talked about that. It looks like a good like $180 card, maybe. But they don't know the price of it yet, right?
No, because it's only sold to OEMs right now. I mean, and so for those who don't know, the RX 5500, they only reviewed the 4 gigabyte version. It seemed to perform roughly about as well as a 580. There were a couple games where it did worse. There was like 1 or 2 games where it beat a 590.
Yeah.
So we're looking at a 580 though for the 4 gigabyte version. and that, that's basically almost tied with the 1650 Super. So it's like, whatever, it's all about the price. If they actually tried to charge $200, and frankly, it's not even the performance, just charging $200 for a 4 GB card is incredibly egregious.
Yeah, looks bad today.
So I would say the most they should charge for this, well, frankly, is $150, but I bet they could get away with $160.
Yeah.
And then I think the 8 GB version, hopefully with the fully enabled die, so they can get that other 10% boost. Hopefully that will be $200. If they hit $200 for 8 GB, $150 for 4, and like maybe it's the 5500 XT is the 8 GB version with a few more compute units enabled, I think they got a winner.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically an 8 GB version would be probably, let's see if I'm looking at this chart here, probably tie the 590 while using half the energy and being like a bit cheaper. Although the 590 is, I think, below $200 now. Yeah, that'll do fine. That'll certainly make the 1660 series pretty irrelevant. There's also rumors they're going to bring out some 5600, which is a further cut down Navi 10. So that would really turn the knife there. And then for 150, the 5500 though, yeah, it's certainly better than the 1650, which is what it's being positioned against.
Yeah,
so I think we can expect it to be below 180 for the 4 GB. I just really think 150 is the price that would nail it.
Yeah, and if they're trying to, twist the knife, that would be a good decision to go like for $150, $160 to against the 1660.
One thing I would say is if it's not 150, or if they even think of doing 180 for it, just don't release it. Don't release it. You're selling it to OEMs, which is good.
Yeah.
One thing they say in the reviews is the fan is incredibly well built and sturdy. It feels like a premium card. So there's no way this thing is like 130 or 140, I think. I think they're going to do 150 minimum. But if they can hit 160 and you're running out of Polaris stock, sure, launch it. But otherwise, just keep selling the 570s. Wait as long as you can, AMD, to debut this. Wait to supply all your OEM customers, sell out Polaris. Just do not launch this at 180 is what I would say.
Yeah, and
I mean, I think 180 is the highest they can kind of get away with it, but I think just don't do it because the reviews will sit there forever and people will. I mean, come on, AMD.
Yeah, and like you said, let Polaris run out, which it seems like that might be what they're doing. I mean, there's not really much of a reason to position anything that competes with Polaris until they're running out of them. But I
mean, I would even go as far as to say, and this is something we talked about in the live stream, I think the real strategy for AMD moving forward should be not hesitating to launch products, nor launch them at good prices. But if you don't want to sell a ton, then never make it a paper launch. But it's like the 3950X. Guys, this is, at least in the US, not a paper launch. But they're certainly going to worry about Epic supplies more. And then Threadripper. And then the 3950X. And so when they have surplus chiplets, we'll make 3950Xs. I think that's how they should handle the 5500 as well. Launch it so it exists. It captures mindshare. You get all these reviews at websites. Launch it for a good price. And then if you make half as many as you're making Polaris, fine. Just don't bother to launch a bad product at launch. There's no point. Then don't launch it. Or just make less of them. And then people will see it's out of stock and buy Polaris. It's just such a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because I was told they were considering doing like 240, maybe for the 8 GB version, or maybe even the 4 GB. And that's just
egregious.
I just want to find the guy whose idea that was. Like, you think forget about selling. You'll look stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's move on to number 5. Rumors of the 2080 Ti Super are coming out, which we all knew it was going to have. Supposedly, this will have the full amount of cores and 16 gigabit per second chips for GDR6. So yeah, you're looking at 15% faster memory and 10% more cores around.
Hey, they're releasing the full chip, though. That's pretty cool. Am I right?
Me and Dan just high-fived. Yeah, but do you know what the thing is? They don't know if it's going to have 11 gigabytes or 12. And I'm like, if it the idea that there's an odd number card, like 11 gigabytes, it's just a slap in the face to people.
I know.
You're not worth 12 gigabytes, you piece of shit.
Here, take your 11.
Take your 11 gigabytes. Yes, sir. Okay.
Stick
Here's
the
my
la-
$1,300 for a
Stick
non-Titan.
the last gigabyte up your ass.
Yes,
We don't
shove
care.
that. Where's the gigabyte? It's up our ass. Right up here.
It's our butt.
Come get it, baby.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they actually make a decent decision once and give it 12 gigabytes. But
Well, and you know what I would say is looking at, I think I did the math ahead of time if I look at the script. Yeah, so like I think it'll be like 7 to 11% more performance if it's an 11 gigabyte card, which should, you know, keep it that 30% stronger than the 2080 Super, because right now it's only 20% better. But if they gave it the full 384-bit bus, the full 12 gigabytes, they could make this a full 10 to 15% better, and I think this would keep them competitive with whatever AMD's got coming out.
and if it just had 11 gigabytes, what would that be? Like a 300?
It's 352-bit.
352. Oh, yeah, I did that math really bad in my head.
Remember, Dan doesn't pay attention to this as much as me, and he comes from the era where they gave you full cards.
Yeah.
But I guess, hey, you know, you vote with your wallet. People said, keep fucking us over. And then so here you go, 11 gigabytes again.
Thank you, Daddy.
Because, you know, the 1080 Ti was too good with its odd number of memory. What a great card. $700 for what used to be $500 and an odd number of RAM.
I mean, that's pretty cool with me.
Please whip me again, Daddy. All right. Number 6. I titled this, What if Nvidia just solved the logical mGPU problem by brute forcing it with software? And so this comes from a couple websites reporting on a new type of multi-GPU rendering where they render various tiles with the GPUs back and forth.
And if I'm remembering correctly, Crossfire used alternate frame rendering.
Yeah,
right?
I think they could both technically do that, but NVIDIA always liked the split rendering.
And SLI used
Usually
one card
split rendering.
rendered half the screen, right?
Yeah, and so now they'll just do tiles that are of equal complexity all over the place.
Oh, that makes sense. So if like one half of the screen was less complex, that might lead to, I don't know, rendering disparity between the two cards with the old system at the SLI.
Yeah. Oh, it certainly did. And that's why you get
yeah.
like 70% scaling, because if you render the top half of the screen, it's always easier pretty much than the bottom half of the screen where the ground is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, so I find it interesting that they launched this right before rumors of the Hopper architecture come out, which might be a multi-die design.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and the one thing I will say is this: NVIDIA has the money if they wanted to.
Oh, so they might just brute force multi-die solution. Oh,
that is a way to do it. Maybe they will just make it so their drivers inherently tell the APIs it's one card and interpolate it for them and do tiled rendering. That's a thing. That's not confirmed, everyone. But when I see this and then I see the Hopper rumor, I think
it's hard to not connect 2 and 2.
Yeah, and and this is what NVIDIA has to do. They have to keep the performance crown at this point.
Yeah,
because Intel's coming in, and even though I don't think Intel's going for the high end, they're just going for efficient laptop chips first. That's gonna be a real problem for NVIDIA. NVIDIA needs to be able to eventually sell their whatever their MX 250, 350 replacements are, where they'll do like, maybe multiple Hopper 50 millimeter squared chips that render together. They could just do dual, basically MX 250s and make a tiny die.
Yeah.
They need to be able to outcompete Intel there, and they need to be able to stay ahead of AMD where they are now. And they're only 30% above the 5700 XT. They need to stay 30% above AMD at least. In fact, I think most people think 30% isn't enough. And I mean, I know some people are talking about NVIDIA taking back some market share last quarter, but it's like not, again, it's not like NVIDIA's pummeling them like the 290X days or the late 290X days, really.
Yeah.
But they need this. The NVIDIA is a gaming GPU company. That's where their money comes from. So I could see them really, really, really putting in the effort.
Yeah, and I mean, this would be an interesting solution as opposed to what some people originally thought, like they just arrived at their version of Infinity Fabric for GPUs before AMD did. Well, what if they just brute force it?
Yeah, which they'll have to have some kind of communication that's better than normal. But yeah,
obviously.
I mean, but maybe they just go with this, and over time they try to work out the kinks so that they can get it to just work like Infinity Fabric is at AMD. Building your first PC and don't know where to start? Go to Build Core's PC Parts and Builds on iOS or Android and select between CPUs, motherboards, RAM, video cards, storage, power supplies, and CPU coolers. I have the app open right now, and when I click on CPU coolers, it lists them from top to bottom, most expensive to least expensive, and tells you where to buy them. This is an excellent app for sorting through the rough and building your first PC. Build Core's PC Parts and Builds on both iOS and Android. I actually went into mechanical engineering to become a gun designer, but I found out upon leaving college that most of the design houses are in the deep south. I don't really feel like living in rural Florida. That meant I had to go to Detroit. And in Detroit, I work for one of the major 3 automotive manufacturers. There, I learned I had to finally start drinking coffee. And you know what? I shit you not. When I first started making coffee, I just used a mixture of instant coffee combined with hot chocolate. 50-50. I didn't need a lot of caffeine back then, and I thought, the hot chocolate makes it good enough. Well, over time, I realized I didn't feel like being fat anymore, so I started to work out, and I started to watch my eating. I went into this thing called a feeding window where I only can eat for 8 hours a day. And you know what's a great hunger suppressant? Coffee. But it has calories if you put sugar or milk in it. So I had to start drinking coffee that wasn't 50-50 instant coffee and hot chocolate. I mean, what was I, 5 years old? So I started to appreciate the better taste, even if I'm not a coffee person. And one place you can go now to get an excellent coffee taste is Rogue Coffee Roasters. These guys are a small startup based in Milwaukee in the heartland of America that just make good coffee. They have a proprietary infusing process that roasts beans with unique flavors that don't taste artificial. I personally like Basic Bitch because it tastes like a pumpkin latte without the 380 bullshit calories you get at Starbucks. And you know what? They've got other things too. They've got Bordeaux infused coffee beans. They've got Magarabi. I don't know if I said that right, but it's coffee infused with mint and it tastes delicious. And you know what? The holidays are almost here, so reward someone with a gift. The gift of good coffee and the gift of not having to eat in the morning. And you know what? Right now, there is a deal where if you spend over $59, you get free shipping. And that's at roguecoffeeroastersmke.com. And in fact, if you use the code BROKENSILICON, you will get 10% off your order. Go to Rogue Coffee Roasters MKE, use offer code BROKENSILICON, and get the gift of good coffee. All right, back to the show. But yeah, so number 7, Nvidia opening up G-Sync to AMD graphics cards and game consoles. So if you have a G-Sync TV or monitor, you can use...
Are you telling me that the G-Sync thing was just a
DRM module? Wait, I thought it couldn't work with AMD cards.
It's too advanced for AMD.
Yeah, AM dumbs don't get that.
Hey.
AM delusionals. I mean, honestly, this was insanely unexpected to me.
I mean, what was G-Sync? Were G-Sync monitors doing well? Seemed like they were kind of a joke.
I don't know. It's hard to say because at first they made a lot of money per unit. They basically got to sell this $100, $200 useless DRM chip to monitor manufacturers. But the monitor manufacturers usually also got to jack up the price another $100. So everyone was happy making extra money on the, quote unquote PC master race. The people who have the luxury of 11 gigabytes of memory and then buy a $1,000 monitor that's worse than a $500 TV.
Yeah, the $1,000 monitor that's just a $500 monitor with a $20 DRM module.
Yeah. Well, there's also RGB on it, though.
RGB?
You take everything back, don't you?
Yeah, I take all of it back.
Yeah. So let me see here. Let me look at this article a little closer, though. Okay, so I don't know if it's confirmed completely yet. The horse's mouth now suggests, yeah, but it looks like it's pretty much a sure thing. Yeah, whenever this happens, what I'll be excited about is just the fact that I don't need to worry anymore if I just see a good monitor, because sometimes G-Sync monitors were a reasonable price.
Yeah.
If I see a monitor that fits all of my needs, I can just get it instead of having to freak out about, is it this, is it that? I'll just look at the actual specs and it'll work with my stuff. And by the way, not just my AMD cards, but my consoles too. That would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a win for consumers. So
yeah, and again, just for me, the biggest thing is, oh, that's unexpected.
Yeah,
wouldn't you say?
which my guess if they're actually opening this up to other non-Nvidia cards, my guess would be G-Sync is kind of failing, but I don't know.
I think we all knew that Nvidia was going to have to open this up eventually.
Yeah.
And I think Adore does a good job in one of his videos of outlining how AMD just kind of let Nvidia get away with another insane marketing win. Again, Nvidia, for those who don't know, has basically, well, we know that they've been bringing quote unquote, biggest rolling of eyes G-Sync to non-G-Sync DRM monitors, basically just monitors that meet their specifications, which are higher than AMD's minimum, to call it FreeSync, although FreeSync 2 kind of was supposed to take care of that. They should have just called it something else probably. And that they said, if we certify your monitor for G-Sync, though, you have to remove the FreeSync label.
Yeah.
So now everyone just sees NVIDIA as, which to be fair, NVIDIA did kind of bring this variable refresh rate out before AMD. So we do kind of have to thank them for that initiative, actually.
And AMD marketed it as FreeSync, which just sounds like, here's our shitty G-Sync. That's kind of what that sounds like to me.
Yeah,
at least from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah, I don't know how AMD keeps making these mistakes and just lets NVIDIA get away with these insane marketing wins.
I don't know.
Insane mindshare wins. But the good news is we can all use it now. So, I mean, that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on to number 8. AMD confirms Zen 3 brings entirely brand new CPU architecture, significant IPC gains, faster clocks, and higher core counts.
Higher clocks and higher core counts.
Let's be clear. I think higher clocks is going to be like 100 to 200 megahertz. So we might get, you ready for it? This would be funny. This is what I'm hoping.
4.9.
4.9 gigahertz.
4.9.
Just 100 short of 5 gigahertz would be hilarious to me.
The dream of 5 gigahertz will never be achieved on AMD.
Nope. AM dumbs. AM slow. I've seen people say that. AM slow. I know there's
it's not
no
very
G.
clever.
Nah, most of these people aren't very smart.
There's some people that they really put time into the clever derogatory terms for fans, but then AM slow is just so boring, and I don't know.
But yeah, if I look at this, it looks like, there's a WCCF's article kind of just putting out some of the obvious stuff, like what the density increases can be. But yeah, I mean, I expect it to be like Ivy Bridge. Ivy Bridge had a couple hundred megahertz faster clocks than Sandy Bridge. It had 20-30% reductions in energy usage. And then it also had some other nifty features like better, way better graphics. I guess for Zen, it'll be more like the Zen 3 APUs will probably use RDNA, so that'll be a boost in graphics. But I mean, that's expected. I mean, I think there will probably be more 3D stacked, or should I say, not 3D stacked, but they'll have L4 cache options on some of them, I think. And yeah, so I think that's exciting. I think we're looking at, again, right, if it was even 20% less, even 10% less power usage, 10% higher IPC, slightly higher clocks, 1.1 times, a 10% reduction. Now we're at like 1.21. And then you add like the, bump. We're going to at least a 25% increase. So this is going to be a much bigger deal. And there's a lot of rumors that at least in server and in some of their SKUs, there will be higher core counts. No word on AM4 though. I'll say that.
Okay. So we're not sure yet if it's going to be higher core counts for Zen 3 itself then?
No, they're changing the CCX system, so it's not 2 CCXs in a chiplet anymore, but just like one big 8-core chiplet. And so that should bring some pretty significant IPC gains. They'll probably use the extra density to add more cache on the chiplet. IO die, no word. I mean, for all we know, we'll use the same IO die. Probably not. But
the same like a 12 nanometer one we have now?
But there's been no suggestions the IO die is getting some crazy change. But they always have that option. They could launch an IO die with HBM on it, or if they have a little bit they have some room on AM4 and even on EPYC still. They could still fit on there a few more chiplets, and some of those could be HBM. So yeah, I mean, this is exciting. It just, again, whether it has SMT4 or not, Zen 3 is going to be a big deal. And if they remove SMT4, what this is telling you is it's actually not Zen 2.5. It's just, no, they decided it was better to go a different route to scale performance. And there's no indication SMT4 is gone, by the way.
Yeah, it might just be further down the road, like with Zen 4 or 5 or something.
Yeah, and I mean, from talking to a couple people, I really get the indication that they ran into some problems implementing SMT4 and scheduling correctly and sharing resources across the cache. And so if you start running into issues adding SMT4, 4 threads per core, you have to ask yourself, is it worth dying on this hill? Or should we just beef up the cores, get it out with higher core counts, better efficiency in 2020, and then we can add it once it's perfected? I mean, I don't think people have a small amount of threads right now.
Yeah, and especially with SMT4, like maybe not even being that useful in a lot of applications right now. I mean,
and even if it was useful, it's like you got to get it perfect, because if the scheduling's off at all, even in like some of the applications, I mean, look, think of this, right? Those 6 cores, and from what I can tell too, I am not a hardware engineer, but from what I can tell, my idea of like disabling 1 thread isn't a thing. Maybe they could disable 2 or all of them, but for the most part, if they implement SMT4 on the chiplets, they'll probably just want to bring up to almost the entire lineup.
Okay.
So that means your 4600 would then have 6, 12, 18, 24 threads.
Yeah.
So you're already at 24 threads for the lower mid-range. And then once you hit 8 cores, you're at 32 threads, which we know Windows can do. They can do 32 threads. But that's about when they start running into issues. And so right when you get to a 12 core, 48 threads, 32 core, 128 threads, Threadripper would be a hilarious event.
Like 64 threads, 64 cores, 256 threads.
Yeah. Like who knows? Like they need to get that down. They're just getting Windows to make do with 32 threads and 64 threads, and most applications still are complete. I mean, there were some where they crashed. In old games, they said would crash if you used the 32 core Threadripper. So yeah, let's get that worked out before we move on with that, I think. Dragon Eddie 031 writes in, just like you can if you support us on Patreon, and says, on 16 nanometer and 2020 to 7 nanometer, Moore's Law Z, how long do you think it will take for them to have equal or better performance as Intel and or AMD? All right, so let me see. I think he's talking about NVIDIA. Okay. I may have cut off the question. I don't remember. So, I mean, NVIDIA's got better performance than AMD right now, but just having giant dies. But that's right now. AMD still hasn't. I mean, even if it was on 16 nanometer, they would have a small die pretty much compared to what NVIDIA's working with. Yeah. My God, the 2060 is 445 millimeters squared. That's almost Vega sized. Vega 14 nanometer size. So, which is about the same performance as Vega 64 as well. So that tells you that it's really not. They're just using die space, guys. But they can if they do that. I mean, I think if they hit 7 nanometer on TSMC or Samsung, they'll be caught up. Probably.
Yeah, probably.
There's no, unless RDNA 2.0 coming out next year is like another 50% jump or something, which I don't expect. Well, I've heard some people say that you shouldn't underestimate it.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
But yeah, so I mean, I think NVIDIA is not a node behind. I really don't count 12 nanometer as a node behind, considering how big the reticle limit is. It's just how they've decided to scale performance. Instead of going small and newer, they went
big,
like a quarter node upgrade over 16 nanometer that has huge sizes. I think they can do the same. They can go to Samsung 7 nanometer, make an 850 millimeter squared die, and that'll compete with 6 nanometer or 7 nanometer UV RDNA. And
I mean, yeah, and the amount of shit they would be able to fit on a die that big on that node, that a lot of transistors.
The question is what they will do with it, though, because they are running into scaling issues. If you look at the performance difference between the 2080 Super, which has faster memory, and the 2080 Ti, it's like 20%. So if you think about the core differences, 1, 2, No, that doesn't really add up. It seems like it's mostly just the extra bandwidth.
Yeah.
So I wonder how much more they'll add. I think they're going to use a lot of that die space to like quadruple ray tracing performance, which I think we all knew was going to happen, right?
Yeah, they're going to
4 times the performance is Turing, everybody.
Well, yeah, and they're going to stick with ray tracing for a while. And I don't know, maybe if they can get it 4 to 8 times better in the next couple of years, maybe it'll be semi-useful.
But again, it's still basically just an extra effect right now. They're not actually ray tracing.
Ray tracing is a gimmick right now.
The ideal of ray tracing is to just have one global light and then like other lights you put around, and then you don't need to like program anything special. It can just handle it for you. And that is not what is happening. It's just like we just added another special effect like PhysX.
Yeah, because the way it works right now, isn't it like it shoots out?
So there's still rasterized lighting.
Yeah.
They still have that.
Yeah.
And then they also add ray trace lighting that just goes on top of it for the things that can use it.
Yeah, because we don't have processors strong enough, right? Well, I should say graphics cards strong enough right now to handle that much ray tracing.
No, it's a weird, awkward hybrid approach. Okay, number 9. The Intel 10 nanometer demand issues continue, but there's some interesting snippets here in a letter Intel sent to customers and partners. Intel specifically says the company is in a weird place as for investing CapEx goes. Putting too much CapEx into 14 nanometer right now does not make sense as the company is trying to transition to 10 nanometer volume, but at the same time meet 14 nanometer demand, and it still cannot. It will lose market share to AMD. That said, putting CapEx into 14 nanometer would make the ramp to 10 slower and also cause market share loss, even more market share loss to AMD. In their opinion, this is the dilemma Intel is working with right now, and we are also actively working towards 7 nanometer EUV. So right off the bat, Dan, that's a pretty interesting letter. I think a lot of people have ignored.
It's a big deal that they're saying now. Yeah, we understand that demand issues for 14 nanometer are there. I mean, not demand, supply issues are there for 14 nanometer, but we have to stop. We have to ramp up 10 nanometer at some point, which suggests that 10 nanometer is going to be they're trying to actually make it the dominant node at some point.
Exactly. Or at least a sister node, a node that is real, that they really, really are using. And this is something I keep seeing people in the comments go, didn't you see, I don't know, that adored video, 10 nanometer is dead. And it's like, here's the thing. The sources I have that work with people at Intel, my sources are saying it was nearly canceled and that it really was being kept around for R&D. In many ways, it still is. But that yields did start to improve early 2019. And they said, we're doing it. We're pressing ahead with Ice Lake. And that they continue to improve and that they will get to a 10 nanometer plus. I think it's plus next year. I think, yeah, because Ice Lake's plus.
Yeah.
And 10 nanometer non-plus was basically potato nanometer. And so that this really will be a real node. Now, they will get 38-core Ice Lake server chips out. They will get quad-core Tiger Lakes out. That should be not just... Because right now, I would say the best Ice Lake quad cores are definitely better than the best 14-nanometer quad cores, but they can only make a few, and the worst ones are like way worse than the mid-range 14-nanometer. Yeah. So their yields are still not great, and they can still only make tiny chips. But if they can get it to the point where even the lower 10 nanometers are markedly better than the best 14 nanometer. I mean, they will have a very viable node. And, Willow Cove, which we'll get to in a second, looks pretty impressive. So again, I think they really are transitioning. And this is why I say I really could see them push up a few Halo 10 nanometer desktop products late 2020, early 2021. And everyone goes, who cares? It's not going to beat Zen 3. Guys, I'm not your enemy. I'm not saying it's going to be Zen 3, but it would at least stop AMD from becoming mad with power, which is what I'm hoping. Yeah, I want AMD to be in charge. I just don't want to be mad with power.
Yeah, and hopefully at some point Intel can press on. And the letter you said mentioned 7 nanometer, but hopefully they can get there.
I'm not ready to talk about that
nanometer.
Yet.
Yeah.
All I have is, a couple sources saying, hey, they really, really think they can get it out by the end of 2021. But don't place bets.
Yeah. Okay.
Which, of course not. I'm not
Never
putting
bet
any
on
bets
Intel.
on Intel right now. Like, they have screwed up so many things, but I do hope so. I do hope they can get 10 nanometer Halo products out by the end of 2020 so that Zen 3 will better. Because if it gets even, like right now, I'd say AMD's about twice as good. If they get close to 3 times as good,
Well, Intel's just not an option at all anymore.
like literally not an option, even in laptop, then you'll see AMD start price gouging. AMD still can't price gouge because they don't have enough market share to like really get away with that yet.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. I want them to be in charge so that Intel learns their lesson and AMD gets enough money to really survive forever. I do not want just wanton
kicking.
I don't want a pile driver situation where we have just i3 start getting above, because that's what we're looking at with Zen 3 if Intel doesn't get some kind of 10 nanometer out by the early 2020 on desktop. If they don't get some kind of 10 nanometer Halo products out, I mean, we're looking at the 4600 beating their 10 core in gaming
their
potentially.
i9s.
Yeah. Because single core still matters a lot in gaming. And if they got, let's say Zen 3 is 10 to 20% better single core performance, single thread performance.
Yeah.
That'll be enough. At this point, a Skylake 10 core won't matter for shit, even against AMD's 6 core. And that's basically what happened with the i3 versus pile driver.
Yeah, and I guess we could see ourselves getting into a reversal of that situation. So hopefully they can get a large production of 10 nanometer by soon.
Yeah. So anyways, I have a reader mail question, which of course, again, if you support us on Patreon, you can write in. Ike says, what will be the long-term effects of TSMC and GlobalFoundries' recent legal settlement? Will GlobalFoundries start licensing 7 nanometer? Would they hop right to 7 nanometer UV, possibly co-manufacturing Zen 3 for AMD? So did you see any of this drama, Dan?
No, I haven't really seen that much about it.
So I think there was just a lot of countersuing going on between them. And now they've seemed like a pretty magnanimous deal here where they're just like, we're done and we'll cross-license a lot of patents. But I know. But what I want to address from Ike's question is, will GF start licensing 7 nanometer? I think this is something enough people haven't been clear about. Maybe me, and probably including me. GlobalFoundries did not cancel 7 nanometer because they didn't think they could get to it. GlobalFoundries seemed really confident they could. In fact, they were saying it might be even slightly better than TSMC's 7 nanometer. However, it costs billions of dollars and GlobalFoundries doesn't have a lot of money. So basically, they are going to be forced to spend every penny they have getting to 7 nanometer. If anything went wrong, that it would be a big issue and that they didn't see it as worth it from a business point of view. I don't think GlobalFoundries needs to license a bunch of stuff to get there.
Yeah.
They just have to decide to do it. And so I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I could see them possibly licensing some things to get to EUV, sure. But again, I think what I want to say is they were going to co-manufacture like Zen 2 and other 7 nanometer stuff. They were specifically planning their 7 nanometer to be able to be completely usable for any design for TSMC. So AMD could go to both.
Okay.
And then they just canceled it.
Well, I mean, and with Zen 2, we're still seeing some of that, right? The I/O die is GlobalFoundries, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's 12 nanometer FinFET non-FDX.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they could go to 12 nanometer FDX if they really want to. I don't know if there's really a point yet. I don't know. I don't think it's fair enough to say if it was a mistake, but I'm leaning towards it was a mistake to not move to 7 nanometer.
Yeah, I mean, unless they just straight up didn't have the money, but...
Yeah, and I guess we won't know everything, and we won't know what could have gone wrong or right if they did. There's no way to know for sure, but seeing TSMC just make record profits after record profits, and then just say, guess what? Those record profits, $20 billion in new foundries. So guess what? Don't worry, there's not going to be supply issues in the future. We're just going to have all supply.
Yeah.
And then I think they went
maniacal after.
Yeah. And so I really think GF didn't consider that. You understand, you might just allow TSMC to get away with everything.
With just winning.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. And I think GF can do what it wants to do, but they better do it.
Yeah.
Come on. All right. Number 10, Willow Cove info. So we were just talking about that. Let me pull up that article for me and Dan to look at. So yeah, it has a cache rebalancing, and it is another architectural upgrade over Ice Lake. I just hinted at that a little bit. Now we can embrace this conversation a little more. Yeah, it's going to have more I/O, PCIe 4.0, which I covered a few times.
Yeah, that's...
and a large increase in cache size and changing to the cache system. I mean, we're looking at something that from at least the person I talked to at Intel says it's not going to be as big as Ice Lake, Willow Cove, but it's bigger than these bullshit 5% increases. It could be a 10% IPC increase again.
So, I mean, that's a respectable IPC increase.
Mm-hmm.
That's not massive.
I think because basically Ice Lake catches up to Zen 2, maybe even slightly eclipses its IPC.
Yeah.
And then it looks like Willow Cove might catch up, allow it to keep up with Zen 3.
Yeah.
Although it'll still be quad cores. But again, this is what we were talking about. If they can get yields to a respectable level, if they can have Zen 3 IPC and a little better efficiency, these are going to be some more sick, super thin laptops. And I think the graphics are supposed to be a lot better too. I'll throw that in there.
The graphics are supposed to be a lot better, you said?
I don't know. I've actually heard conflicting things about that. They're supposed to be, but I've heard conflicting things.
But yeah, I was just going to say Intel just seems to be competing for the laptop space, at least right now.
Yeah.
Which they're doing a good job keeping AMD out of that still. So.
Yeah. And I think that's just moving forward until they can get either 10 nanometer at least most of the way to as good as 14 nanometer in terms of yields. Oh, well, 14 super mature. I mean, until they can get it to 60 or 70% yields and switch over some of their foundries to 10, so they have like a bunch of 10 nanometer foundries, or until they get to 7 nanometer EUV and tool up at a bunch of foundries, they're basically forced to just make these hyper efficient, hyper competitive laptop quad cores. Problem is AMD's moving to 8 cores and APUs next year. Yeah. And then at the same time, flooding the desktop market with 14 nanometer. They're not really flooding quite yet, but guys, they can. If their capacity, they'll just lower the price. They can certainly afford. They can certainly afford to sell that 10 core coming out next year for like $200.
Unless all of their demand needs to go to supplying like servers, but
which is the priority. Yeah. So that's the funny thing too, is it's almost helping them as they lose a little bit of do-it-yourself market and the entire HEDT market right now. Those aren't big markets, but they're like, whatever, we're making Xeons right now and hoping to keep up demand.
And laptops, which is what most people buy anyways.
Yeah, I guess Willow Cove looks exciting. I'm excited to see Zen 3 APUs versus Willow Cove late next year.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. Do you know at all like what their efficiency for the manufacturing on 10 nanometer is right now? Or
there's nothing.
There's no data. Okay, I was just curious.
Here's what I'd say. So Cannon Lake came out in 2018.
Yeah,
they only made dual cores. They weren't even disabled quad cores. They only tried to make 2 cores, 4 threads, and none of them had graphics. So they were like freaking tiny chips that were like 10 watt i3s that they sold in laptops in Asia. And those had lower clocks than the 14 nanometer i3s. And they had the same architectural IPC, if not maybe slightly better. I think it was the same. And so I've heard people say, I have never seen an official document or statement, but I've had people who worked at Intel say, I mean, the yields may have been as low as 1%. And that they just produce they just produced like 10,000 chips, threw most of them away, and then said, we made 10 nanometer, and they used it to learn from mistakes too, though.
And as you said earlier in the podcast, the 10 nanometer potato.
Yeah. At the potato yields. And then they go to 10 nanometer plus with Ice Lake. What I know is I can get one at Best Buy, and the best yields are better than 14 nanometer, or at least comparable. So if I had to guess, I think Broadwell was at like 40% yields when it first came out. So I'm guessing 30.
Not good.
Not 1% though. So they're improving.
That's 40 times better.
But I'd say I don't expect them to really attempt to make any desktop chips until they can get to at least, I think Skylake was at about 70. Okay. I remember hearing they still were having problems with Skylake, but it just got better from there. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing they're at like 40 now, 30 to 40, and they will be at 50 at least next year, which is enough where they can at least have Broadwell levels of
some token CPUs for the
Broadwell wasn't token though.
Market.
Oh yeah, they can have some token ones for the do-it-yourself, like they did with Broadwell.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Dan has a token. He has a token i7.
I'm about to get. Well, I'm not going to get rid of it, but I'm about.
Nah, we should keep that. Its graphics are really good too. Even to this day, it's about as good as. Well, nah, it's not as good as an MX250 probably.
I don't know.
I don't know, maybe.
I would need to look. I don't remember.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on to number 11. This is fun, Dan. So let's just, this is about Google Stadia, how it's doing. I will say, and I will continue to say, I think Google Stadia's success will be predicated on if they can have ads pop up on a YouTube video, new Assassin's Creed, click to play, and it says now for free. You click on it, it's in 720p, maybe even just 30 frames, but they get the input lag down to a point where it's not god awful. And they have ads in the background, but you get to try it out for an hour. That is what Stadia should be for the people that weren't ever going to bother to download a game for $5, but would put up with some ads if they can literally play by clicking now.
Yeah, and
it's not what it is, though.
Yeah, Stadia is in its current state bad, in my opinion, because
very bad. Yeah.
You need to pay a subscription fee and pay for all the games, right? And deal with really bad.
Which I forgave when I heard about that because it's like 4K 60 HDR. That's still a premium experience. So I get what they're trying to do. They're like, well, this is better than your $1,000 PC. So that's why we're charging some amount of money for streaming. It's just not, though.
And they also make you buy a stupid fucking box, though.
Yeah. And so here's the thing, though. It's not better. There were some games where it looked clearly worse than like high settings on PC. There was tearing. And there are some games they said worked fine, actually. But some games, the input lag, especially on a slower TV, was like crazy bad.
Yeah, and I saw some videos. It looked like, it's hard to say, but it looked like it was probably about 200 millisecond delay. So,
well, and that was on TVs,
bad.
though. I bet if you were on a monitor, it wouldn't be.
Oh, yeah, that's
But
true.
this is the problem. A lot of people play their consoles or their, living room PCs on a TV. Let's be honest. Humans are not always the fastest reaction times. You can have a 10, 20, 50 millisecond delay and people might not notice. Now, I specifically bought my TV because it has gaming monitor response times.
Mm-hmm.
And it's noticeable, by the way, over my old Sharp TV. It is definitely noticeable. Or our parents' Sony TV that's like 5 years old. It's definitely noticeable lower response times. But most people won't even notice if it's 50 milliseconds, but they will notice if you're streaming at 100 milliseconds plus 50. It's just a threshold. Either you notice it or you don't. And combining like the slower TVs with streaming is a problem I bet Google didn't anticipate. The fact that it's just that extra 100 that makes it worse.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense, I guess.
Because I saw some TVs at some websites where like they like show a GIF, they press the button, and even without it being a slow-mo GIF, you can see like the delay in shooting. I think it was like Far Cry, actually.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember the video I saw. It was I don't know, it looked like some really cheap game that like, I don't know, press colors when they show up thing or something like that. But
like you could see him not just press the button, but his thumb get off the button and then it moved.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
Yeah. So yeah, right now, Google Stadia is a complete bust. It only has like 30 games. I think they just added another 10 or something.
A complete bust, as I predicted, because when I saw it, I was like, that's not going to work very well.
I just want everyone to succeed, but not looking like it. And also, they talk about this on the Sacred Symbols podcast, the fact that right before Stadia came out, Microsoft just walks out. Guess what? You can now stream on Xbox Game Pass. And they walk away.
Yeah.
That was just them announcing right before Stadia comes out. This is fucked. And this is also right before Stadia came out, Sony drops the price on PS Now.
And I'll also add, I'm fine with Stadia failing. Personally, I don't think Google needs to be more powerful than they already are.
Just like, I hope like The Mandalorian, that looks like a good show, survives somewhere. But I'm fine with Disney Plus not doing well. I don't know if Disney needs more power.
Yeah, exactly.
Google's powerful enough. They're a mega company. I was hoping it would work out. And I will say this again. I really, really think that what they're going for is a success if it's just free games for people who won't bother to pay a few dollars and can click on an ad. But it's clear it's not going to target that. They really tried to make it look like it was this new premium experience that's easier, and that's just not happening.
Not what it is. Yeah.
Not happening at all. At least not yet. Even a little bit.
No.
All right. So let us move on to number 12. A new Half-Life game. Half-Life. 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 Half-Life Alyx VR looks amazing.
Yeah, I think I said this on the live stream. It looks really good. I hope I get to play it at some point, but
Eventually we will.
yeah.
You know, I'm just happy it's going to exist because here, I'll be honest, when I heard they were making a Half-Life VR game, I just assumed it was like episode 2 put in VR or something,
same.
you know, or Half-Life 1 remastered in VR. Like that's kind of what I expected, which again, I would want to play that eventually, but then I watched the trailer and I was like, oh no, they've completely,
This is a game.
This is a full game. Its graphics aren't, as good as Death Stranding, but they are good. They're much, much better than what they used to be. It's completely new story with, Alex's backstory, which is a great idea. Showing him like pick up with his hand gloves, like the shotgun shell and put it in the shotgun system. And I got goosebumps when I heard like the when she killed the guy, one of the combine, and the heart-stopping noise played.
Yeah.
And the mysterious man at the end, the G-Man, stepping out of the darkness.
Yeah, which I heard that. It was interesting. Can't remember the podcast, but they were talking about how, it's kind of obvious that their next big game would be a VR-only game because Valve always, tries to demonstrate tech with their games.
Yeah, I thought they would have done this a long time ago. Frankly, I thought there was a chance they were going to do a Half-Life 3 or at least episode 3.
It can't be an episode 3. Valve hates
Can't
3.
even do a Half-Life 2 episode 3?
Valve hates 3.
I thought that'd be a compromise.
Maybe they could do episode 2. That might work.
2-2?
Yeah,
I guess that would work. Or 2-1 and then 2-2. But yeah, the running joke that they'll never make a third game of anything. But yeah, I thought they would do that for SteamOS's launch.
Yeah.
I mean, what a no-brainer.
I don't know. At this point, I feel like if they actually tried to make a proper sequel to Half-Life, it would. There's no way it wouldn't disappoint everyone. So
that was something that I heard someone say too, which is an interesting idea. Is they kind of had to do something weird with the third game so that they have an excuse. So that this is going to be a good game. Everyone knows, no matter what they made, that's Valve. It's going to be a good Half-Life game. But that the expectations for it to be the best one ever would be too high. So if they make it a VR game, they have an excuse. They're like, well, yeah, but it's a VR game, so it's okay if it's not better than 2.
Yeah.
And at least this will also allow them to test the waters with a 10-hour campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it sells gangbusters, which, it probably will, then they can just say, all right, we just have to make 3.
Which I don't understand how they haven't come to that conclusion yet. But Valve is a weird company that doesn't have any.
Well, they're busy making
structure,
digital hats right now,
which is important.
Apparently, they're just making a goddamn killing on them, so I don't blame them. But at a certain point, I also hear you have to give your people projects that are fun so they don't die of unhappiness. They can't all just want to make hat games.
Maybe they do.
Yeah.
One guy didn't want to, and he made Alex, but Half-Life Alex, I should say.
All right, Dan, we have one more story here, and I added this one for fun. Number 13, Russia is experimenting with VR goggles on cows for milk production.
They're happy VR cows.
What do you think, Dan?
It looks pretty cool.
Putting VR devices on farm animals.
If that actually works, that's interesting. I don't know, though. It is Russia.
Could you just, it is Russia. See, because it's I'd say there's a most likely this is just them trying to look futuristic and look at our immense potato production. We make best potatoes in VR cows. And then none of it's ever actually working.
I'm curious if the cows, because I know your dog isn't like this, but my dog doesn't even
I'm reading this article. I'm sorry, I pointed. Dan's looking at what I'm pointing at here. The ethics surrounding the experiment are up for debate. What? Who cares about cows wearing goggles? Do the cows give consent to wear goggles, Tom? The cows fart and eat barbed wire. They're not that smart, guys.
Yeah, that's why you need to give them the cow magnet.
So they don't eat barbed wire to death.
Well, no. So if they eat the fencing, it just collects in one spot in their stomach and doesn't
kill them.
Yeah. This is from 4th grade science class, so I don't know how valid this is. So if you're a farmer that raises cows, let us know. do you feed your cows magnets? I was taught this in 4th grade, and I want to know.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't updated that news. I've been to farms recently and seen like the thing though.
Okay.
They still do it, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But
good.
let us know. Write us on reader mail.
But yeah, I was going to say, I don't know. I know your dog notices stuff on TVs, but my dog just straight up can't like register what's on a TV. Like she doesn't care.
Yeah, mine's one of the Oracle dogs if people have seen Isle of Dogs.
So I'm curious, like, is there just how many cows actually register what they're looking at in a VR goggle? Are they just like, why are you covering my face with black and light?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to ask Russia in a year. We'll see what they say.
Milk production up 50%.
Up 50%. Finest milk and cadmium production in all of them of the world. All right. Well, Dan, we have one more reader mail question. Shall we put up with this piece of shit?
Yeah.
God damn it. Dr. Forbin writes in just like you can if you support us on Patreon. And he says, Tom, quit being so arrogant. Well, first of all, I'm not arrogant.
Fuck you, Tom.
Okay. Well, Dan says we'll take any chance he can to just say fuck Tom. I think that's fair, though.
Yeah.
Well, fuck you, Dan. And Dan has a face like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
My question is about value price monitors. What do you recommend under the 350 high refresh? Can I get high res too? So I want to say that one of our die shrinks we're going to do eventually is another like form factor episode about monitors, sizes, and then, that type of thing. So we'll probably talk about it in more detail there. But I do want to bring this up a little bit, the concept that, guys, monitors are like a joke, in my opinion, right now, and how overpriced they are.
High refresh monitor, you can get like a 1080p 144 hertz. How much would that cost?
Well, I got one for $200.
So
4 or 5 years ago.
So my guess is you could get a really good one for like $200 to $300. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't bought a monitor for five years.
And we've talked about this multiple times. Dan has a 6-year-old.
Yeah, almost 6 now.
Almost 6-year-old 4K 5 millisecond response time Samsung monitor. He got it for $600, which is more than you would pay now for a 10-panel 4K. But it's that old, and now what do you get for half? You'll get it for like half the price. I mean, let's put it this way: can you get a high? Can I get high refresh and high res? I mean, our friend Brock got his $350 IPS FreeSync 4K monitor. It was an LG.
What's the refresh?
A few years ago, 60. He can overclock it though. He just hasn't, or maybe he has. I don't know. I think he can go up to 72 hertz
in 4K.
4K.
Can you really go above 60 hertz in 4K right now? I'm sure you can.
Yes.
Some monitors. But
yeah. Well, mine can. My TV can.
Oh, yeah, yours can.
And yeah, they make $200 G-Sync ones, that $2,000 G-Sync ones. Yeah, I don't know. I would say for the past, I'd say 5 years ago, monitors kept going down and down and down in price, and they plateaued. And now they've just slowly been going up over 4 years.
Yeah.
Like $10 higher. And I've seen other people write in when I mentioned this on a die shrink too and say the same thing, that yeah, they're just like, he got a monitor 3 years ago and now it's $10 more and doesn't come with any extra cables. Like, I don't know. I mean, people have basically decided they will pay $150 for a 1080p. They will pay $400 for a 1440p, and they will pay $500 for a 4K. And that's it. People are just going to keep doing that, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know, because
because I want to upgrade, but the prices have not come down since I got my new monitor.
Because I wouldn't want to upgrade until I can at least get like 4K 120 hertz.
And you see all these videos like 4K 120 hertz stupid because it's expensive. Cool, but it's the same price it's been for 5 years.
Yeah,
that's insane.
It should be expensive still.
Like, people just keep buying 1440p monitors for $400, which is laughable. My phone is 4K now. Like, they're just not giving it to PC gamers because they're like, well, apparently they'll pay more for lights instead of a resolution.
I don't know. Hopefully it gets better.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just recap my opinion on monitors, right? I would say I really think I recommend 1080p, 144, maybe 240 hertz if you're an esports gamer, and 4K 60. And a lot of this DisplayPort ones, especially the latest DisplayPorts, if you have a good cable, I've seen a lot of 4K monitors from LG be overclockable to up to 72 hertz.
Yeah.
And so just go with that. You know, that's what and again, it's like, why don't you recommend 1440p? It's in between the price, because it's like, well, what do you want? Do you want a max? Because if you're going to go to 144 hertz, I think you want locked 144. or you want 4K. Like, I don't see 1440p 144 is still not easy to run in most games that are new.
No, and I think
almost no games.
I think that'll be several years before you get graphics cards where that's easy to run.
Maybe Big Navi will just make us laugh at the fact that we were paying so much.
Maybe.
But yeah, so I mean, that's what I recommend. And you can get a 1080p FreeSync 144 hertz for like $150 now. So just get that, or get a 4K IPS for like $300, $350, $400.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my recommendation. And the other thing I will say is look on eBay, because there are some Chinese and South Korean monitors where I know there's a $1,000. It's unfortunately, I think 39 inches or 43 inches. And it's a 4K 120 hertz. But if your desk is big enough and you want a big screen, I know a lot of people as they get older just want bigger screens. So there's that. And then there's also, I've seen like 19 and 20 inch 1800p. So 4 times 900p monitors that are 165 hertz. So if you have a small desk, yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting option.
And 1600p is a pretty good.
18.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's not 16. 1800p is pretty good in between resolution, which it's better enough than 1080p versus.
I would consider that over 1440.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at.
It's close enough to 4K. I think that it looks really, really good. The difference between 1800p and 4K, like if you do a resolution scale down, you do this all the time, Dan, right? Down to like 80% resolution scale.
Yeah.
It still looks fantastic, right?
Yeah.
So that's what most console games run at. And I think they look fantastic. Death Stranding is probably the best looking game I've ever played. Did you agree with that?
It's up there.
Yeah, it's a little above 1440p in resolution, but locked 60 at least. That's nice.
Yeah, and on the 1080p monitor I've been playing on over Thanksgiving at Super Samples. So
yeah, I've got a bunch of portable monitors, and let Dan use my portable 1600p 16 by 10 monitor.
Yeah,
it's 10 inches. He just like puts his head next to it.
It looks good.
Playing on my portable 4K IPS monitor. It's a 16 incher. Not the only thing that's a 16 incher.
Your shoes.
Yep. Anyways, anything? I mean, that's it, Dan. That's all the stories.
We
whipped through them pretty quickly. That's all of the reader mail for this episode. Anything else you want to talk about?
No. Aside from, I'm excited to rebuild my PC.
That's right. Dan's building a 2700X, 16 gigabytes of RAM.
And my 7-year-old ATX tower. Mid ATX tower.
Yeah, it's a smaller one compared to some. I just went to a friend's house. Him and his wife, their towers are like the size of a refrigerator.
That NZXT Phantom.
Yeah, I think they actually have one. But yeah, so I don't know. It's the holiday season. Enjoy. There will be more videos coming, more podcasts coming. 11 years of a PC gamer. 4-part series starts rolling out in a couple weeks. We'll see. And then we'll be rolling into the new year. Please do consider supporting us too. This is fan supported. I do not intend on doing a bunch of motherboard reviews, RAM reviews, where I just have to say something's good. I do like the idea, as long as we can do this, or as long as we can keep scaling it up, of just being like, well, I mean, how many times did we just call these companies stupid in this episode? I like the idea of being able to speak freely.
Yeah.
And that's what the point of it is. Fan support means that. And that's why I continue to roll out more stuff. I am bringing more features to the Patreon too. I'm doing it slowly but surely and thinking of more things to add. I might start bringing out some video versions of podcasts. Let me know what you guys want, because I do have, I'll let you guys on a secret. It's okay. No one's listening anymore. It's the end of the podcast. I'll let you in on a secret on you people who listen to the end. Like I do have a couple of video versions of some of them podcasts stored that I just never have uploaded. I'm considering doing some in the future for, the 4th core unlocked and ups, but I could technically release that Sapphire episode, or maybe a couple of the die shrinks if I wanted to. They're just old episodes, so I don't know if any of you would care.
I don't know how much the video feed adds to it. You can see my shitty camera angle as I put no effort into actually.
Yeah, Dan looks like one of those cool guys on your mom's house. Terrible framing, like you see half of his face.
I don't
see his dog in the background sometimes, though. That'd be fun.
I think it's the most important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's all right.
Pretty cute.
She is pretty cute. We should at least give them a picture of your dog at some point.
I'll send you one.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed our VR cow story that I threw in just because I thought it was ridiculous. Any last words, Dan?
I got nothing.
Yeah, I don't have anything either. It's a cold existence. All right. Happy holidays, everybody. Broken Silicon, a PC hardware and gaming podcast, is predominantly brought to you by me, Tom, of Moore's Law is Dead. You can find all of my content, including videos, articles, and this podcast at www.mooreslawsdead.com. And of course, it is also often co-hosted by my brother, Dan. And it is edited by my sound engineer, Gerard Cortez. You can find his contact information at www.mooreslawsdead.com. You can also find the contact information of my article editor, Carbon Cry. Now, of course, if you want to keep the show running, I really do hope you rate me on your podcasting platform of choice, share it with your friends, and if you have the money, but only if you do, consider supporting me on Patreon at Moore's Law is Dead. If you do, you get access to the Discord to talk to other enlightening people who work not just at AMD, not just at Nvidia, but often in the server space and other computing areas that people often overlook. And of course, if you support it, you can get access to reading these people's names that keep the show running. But without further ado, let me give thanks to my greatest supporters. On November 29th, 2019, the following people at the net burst 10 gigahertz level or higher: Bootman, Hunter Drake, Dean, Ruckus, Justin Yant, Thomas Rupp, Tomas Baraz, Jesse Blanton, Jordan Betcher, Mohammed Al-Khwari, Matthew Rubacher, Prime Tech TV, Justin Parrish, Zachary Martin, Terrence Herod, Colin Marco, Otter Weisek, Thyrister, The Ninth Dude, Greg Renegard, John Bible, Daniel Cage, Night Rogue 77, Mechanical Philosopher, Lebo King Kilo, Folix, Derek Evans, Matthew McMullen, Christoph Novak, Neil X01, Matt Salem, Aaron Close, Sexy, Scott Show, Frederick Lau, Alexander Delar, Alethros, Telos, Kaiden, Greg T. Wanchik, Jacob Barber, X Soti, Wani Care Bear, Matthew Lane, Paul Jones, Jane Roner, Rubber Ducks, Nick Neasy, Ali Robertson, Gordon Lamb, Carbon Cry, Larry Hoskins II, and Michael Costa. Thank you for your support, and thank you to Sahara for this music.